Welcome in to Texans Today and
the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports.
And we have a joint preview coming up. We're going to be talking injuries. We're going to be talking about what we are looking for this Sunday when the Texans eventually take down the Denver Broncos. Isn't that right, Moosey boy?
I don't know about that, but Broncos country, check out the brand new format that we're trying out today. We've tried out some cool new stuff here at Chat Sports. We're trying to figure out what different ways that we can bring you guys fresh and entertaining and engaging football content.
All right, so before we get into our preview and before we get into the injury reports and all the good stuff, we have one question that we're going to ask on today's show. Predict the score, Texans versus Broncos. This is going out on both of our channels. Let's see who gets more comments on this video. Is it going to be more Texans fans or a couple of Broncos fans? Are they going to comment a ton on that video? Go down and give us your score predictions down below. And Moose, I'll let you take the floor with the Broncos injury side of things and what you're looking at.
Okay, so right now, obviously, the main question mark, obviously, is what's going to happen with the Pat Surtain injury now that we know that he's out for foreseeably the next 3 games at minimum. Obviously, this is going to be a battle of defenses on both sides, right? Because the Texans have one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Broncos have one of the best defenses in the NFL. But if I'm looking at kind of what this means for the Broncos is now there's that wide open hole that would be used to guard Nico Collins, right? It would have been Pat Surtain on Nico Collins. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. So you're going to see Riley Moss switch over a lot of man coverage on Nico Collins. And then the next question is, who plays on that outside corner? You're going to see a combo of 2 players. The rookie, Jahdae Barron, who's primarily a nickel but can do it all, kind of that versatile swing corner that you're looking for, but also Chris Abrams-Draine, who got in against the Dallas Cowboys and notably got picked apart a little bit by CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. But he is a really solid backup corner, so he should be able to keep the game in front of him and make a bunch of tackles. The other notable injury that you need to know, Marvin Mims Jr. might not play in concussion protocol. We will wait to get an update on him.
All right, and obviously, kind of going off what you were saying with the Broncos injury report, the Texans injury report, the number one name that we're looking at is Nico Collins. We were just talking about, concussion protocol on your end. Nico Collins, he sat out this past week up against the 49ers with just that. He was out with the concussion, but all roads lead to Nico Collins playing this Sunday. If everything goes to plan, he was already practicing on Wednesday. He was limited, but he looked good out there. Also, Christian Kirk, another receiver that, injured this past week, had a hamstring injury. I'm looking at him. Denico Autry is a name that he's, obviously in a very talented Texans defensive line. He sat out the first 4 weeks of the season and, has slowly came back, but also he's been dealing with injuries to his knee that's kept him on and off the field. That injury I'm looking at, also Jalen Petrie was limited on Wednesday with a foot injury. That's a big part of this Texans defense. He's kind of that pseudo third linebacker. They run a 4-2-5, so he plays like the star nickel position. Mm-hmm. If he can't go, that'll be a huge blow to this Texans defense because he's sneakily been one of the best players for Houston this year. That's a name I'm looking at. And the other one is Dalton Schultz at the tight end spot. He's dealing with a knee and shoulder injury. He's a big part because earlier this week, the Texans' third tight end, who they've been elevating from the practice squad, right, Brendan Bates, he was claimed by the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Texans, in a corresponding move, signed Dalton Keene to their practice squad. But if they're without Dalton Schultz, they really don't have a reliable tight end at all going up against the Broncos. And with their pressure and everything that they do, you need one of those safety blankets.
Well, absolutely. And, the Broncos defense, this pass rush is unbelievable. In fact, there's a stat going around that the Broncos have dominated the offensive and defensive line so much. They are the first team in NFL history through the first 8 games to have 30-plus sacks and only 8 sacks allowed. So it is a really battle of the trenches here. I will talk quickly about these offensive lines because the Texans notably have struggled a lot with the offensive line this year. But the Broncos have their own offensive line issues as well. Ben Powers, our starting left guard, out until December with a bicep injury. So it's going to be a combination of Calvin Throckmorton and Alex Palczewski at that left guard position. What do you think the key is for the Broncos offensive line to take on this unbelievably stout pass rush from the Houston Texans, which features Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr.?
I think, well, you know what? I'm going to give you what I think in just a moment. That's what we call a tease in the biz, because before I get into what exactly I think and what Moose thinks, we got to tell you about our amazing sponsor, over at PrizePicks. Get started today with America's #1 daily fantasy sports app out there. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with PrizePicks. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right, Moose, oh, that never gets old. So keep the season rolling on PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. It's super simple. Just pick more or less on 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win big on this app. And Moose, I think you'll love the lineup that I have going in this weekend. I have a new feature that PrizePicks offers. It's called the Stacks feature, which you can do multiple projections for a single player. I did that with CJ Stroud. I did more on the pass yards, and sneakily, CJ Stroud's been much better on the ground this year, trying to evade those sacks. Obviously, we talked about the offensive line. He's been using his feet to get first down, so I'm going the more on his rush yards. And that Texans defense, I'm going to less on some Broncos players, less on Cortland Sutton receiving yards, and less on the J.K. Dobbins rush yards as Moose shakes his head with disapproval. Go ahead and download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, Moose, it's good to be right.
It is good to be right.
It's good to be right.
And I don't know if your picks are right yet. So far, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, you're betting a lot of Broncos unders here. I don't necessarily know that I love that.
Yeah, I mean, more or less on PrizePicks. I'm going to roll with the Texans. That's what I'm going to do. And we were just talking about the Texans offensive line, what the Texans need to do. First off, let's talk about the Texans on offense, and then I'll talk about what the Broncos need to do against this Texans defensive line. For the Texans on offense, it's very simple, and you got to make sure C.J. Stroud is upright. One thing they've been doing, and it's been an uptick week after week after week, they've been using a lot more of these 6 offensive lineman jumbo packages. They have their 6 offensive linemen. Blake Fisher, he's the swing tackle, they have him playing a lot of tight end, just adding an extra blocker because the Texans offensive line, they've had some trouble with the pass blocking this year. And even though they have 6 offensive linemen, they are kind of susceptible to stunts here and there. But I could expect up against this vaunted Broncos pass rush, you'll be seeing a lot of 6 offensive lineman sets for this Texans offense. And then obviously CJ Stroud, he's going to be a big key in this game as well. The weakness, I would say, maybe not a weakness, but the weakest point in this Broncos defense, in my opinion, would be the secondary. I think the front 7 is amazing. I think if the Texans have any shot, they got to take their deep shots down the field, and they got to take those big chunk plays when they can. Whenever Nico Collins is one-on-one against Riley Moss, I know he's not a scrub, but Nico Collins, you expect a guy like that, your wide receiver 1, to win those battles. You expect C.J. Stroud to maybe, if he does have time, if you do have extra blockers in, to be able to hit those receivers down the field. And if the Texans want to do that, win the game, they got to hit those shots down the field. And I think one key for both sides, for the Texans and Broncos, you asked me before we went to the PrizePicks, sponsor read, what the Broncos offensive line needs to do against this Texans defensive line. And I think it's more on Bo Nix. I think he's got to be very smart with the football. He's got to know when he needs to let that ball go, when he needs to, in man coverage, if the Texans are sending an extra rusher, be able to, put the ball down and run with the football. Baker Mayfield did great against the Texans in week 2. And I think Bo Nix's maturity in this game will be tested up against this Texans team. Him making the right plays. There are some weak spots in this Texans zone, especially the secondary spot, Kalen Bullock and MJ Stewart, that if you get Cortland Sutton or, another one of the receivers, Troy Franklin, maybe downfield, Bo Nix will have those opportunities to take those shots, especially because I think the Broncos offensive line will be able to hold up even against this amazing Texans defensive line. I think it'll really come down to Bo Nix and, making the smart play. I know you said he's had some problems with some inconsistencies. And, fun fact before I turn it over to Moose, both the Broncos and Texans defenses, top 3 in the NFL in third down percentage. Broncos, number 1, Texans, number 3. Third down is going to be the biggest, it already is, but third down is going to be the key factor in this game of which offense can stay on the field and which offense is getting 3 and outs.
Yes, I completely agree with you, and I'm going to tackle a couple of things that you just said. First of all, I have said since probably the beginning of this week, this is one of the most evenly matched up on paper matchups for the Broncos the entire year. I mean, they almost mirror exactly what the Texans do and vice versa. You got a young quarterback that is really good with momentum, right? CJ Stroud, we've seen what he can do when he's playing hot. He is untouchable. Bo Nix in the last 5 quarters has scored 8 touchdowns himself. So that's just, he's playing really, really hot football right now. Granted, one of those was against the Dallas Cowboys, right? Yeah. And then, of course, a massive fourth quarter comeback against the New York Giants. But I think what you see the Texans do well and what the Broncos do well are 2 very similar things. Both really good defenses, both have a tendency to give up the big, deep shot plays, whether that be Riley Moss for the Denver Broncos or for whomever it is for the Houston Texans. I look at this and I say, this game is going to be won by both quarterbacks. If CJ Stroud can be kept upright and get rid of the ball quick, you can move the ball against the Broncos defense. And simultaneously, Bo Nix with his legs we've seen is far better than anybody's given him credit for. So some opportunities when he has more time to throw, if he rolls outside of the pocket and can pick up first downs with his legs, continue those drives, make sure you put the pressure and get the Houston Texans defense on their heels. That's how you're going to win this football game. Both teams, I believe, are playing some of the hottest football right now. I know the Houston Texans coming off a huge win against the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, the Broncos dominating win against the Dallas Cowboys. Should be a lot of fun to watch.
And we will both be live on Sunday. Be there, be square. Noon Central Time. I believe on the West Coast, that would be what, 10 a.m.?
Well, it's Mountain Time.
Mountain Time.
11 a.m.
Oh, Mountain Time. Always gets me with the Mountain Time. But both of us will be live before game time. So make sure, if you're a Texans fan, if you're a Broncos fan, tap in and watch the Texans absolutely throttle the Broncos on Sunday.
Broncos country! Mile high salute.
No chance. Let's go Texans.